Howdy. This is the
Hi.
Perimenopausal podcast. Thanks, Alyssa, for joining us today. Alyssa, I quite literally just saw you on Instagram on the new notes thing that you can put on the messages.
Oh
That's like
my
a
gosh.
status. And
Right.
I was like, at that point, I didn't really know what that was. And so I was like, I don't know who this is, but she's in the fitness space. She writes training, CSCS. And I was like, I might as well. I'm trying to grow the podcast, trying to talk to people that are in our field. And so I was like, why not? Let's ask. And you said yes. And so I'm glad that we're able to do this, especially before the new year.
Yeah.
So this will be the first episode of the new year, and I'm
Well,
looking
that's
forward to
cool.
it. Isn't it? It's pretty neat. I'm going to expand. All right. So Alyssa, can you tell us about who are you?
Who am I? Oh my gosh. So my name is Alyssa Parten. I am a strength and conditioning coach, more specifically in powerlifting. And I own a remote coaching business called Lady Beef Inc. And so we are a team of coaches and now a registered dietitian that just came on to help our athletes, you know, go as far as they possibly can in powerlifting. And so I also compete. I compete as a 60 kilo lifter now in USAPL. Ever since they kind of changed our weight classes on us, I was 63 and then dropped down to the 60 kilo class. I am also a PhD student in exercise science, and I just started my second year. So going into the spring, at the very end of that semester, I will be proposing for my dissertation and starting that process. And so that's been a lot of fun. I have gotten the chance to do some research on different powerlifting strategies and train females already. And then my dissertation is going to essentially look at the effects of perimenopause, which is the transition phase from premenopause, the reproductive years of a female, into that menopause stage of life. And so the reason for that is that perimenopause phase is when a female's body really starts to change. Their body composition changes, their hormonal levels change, and that really increases their risk for metabolic disease and cardiovascular disease. But I have it in my head. We're going to have to, obviously look at it and see if my hypothesis is true. But I think that if you go into that phase of life, having trained very strategically and specifically, then you can mitigate a lot of those symptoms that we see with perimenopause. So I'm essentially going to compare sedentary, symptomatic perimenopausal women to highly trained perimenopausal women, kind of like masters powerlifting athletes, and see at what point, if we are putting those females through a training program, do their symptomatology start to resemble the trained females who don't have any symptoms. So looking forward to all of that.
There's a lot to unpack in all of that. But I mean,
Yeah.
so what is your man? There was a lot there. What are the symptoms? What are the symptoms that are usually associated with those premenopausal women that you're looking at investigating?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different umbrella terms for the symptoms that perimenopausal women go through. One being somatic, which is like insomnia and headaches, fatigue, that sort of thing. And then vasomotor, which is like the one that research really hasn't been able to confirm if training has an effect on. So we pretty much have clarified that whatever type of exercise you do, that will improve your sleep, that'll improve your fatigue, it improves headaches, things like that. But the vasomotor side is when you have like the hot flashes, that sort of thing, and it has like a thermoregulatory situation going on. And that's because estrogen, whenever you're in that menopausal phase, those reproductive years, our estrogen levels help us with thermoregulatory systems. And whenever your estrogen levels start to fluctuate very sporadically, like we see in perimenopause, and then level out in the menopausal stage, that impairs our ability to basically release heat because it has an effect on nitrogen oxide, which has an effect on thermoregulation. So one thing that I have noticed in my reading, because that's like the stage I'm at right now in my PhD, like before I get into this like dissertation proposal, is I am heavily in the research because I've got to know my topic, you know. And it's been very interesting that I have seen that a lot of studies have looked at the effects of exercise on vasomotor symptoms, but they haven't looked at resistance training. They've looked at cardio, they've looked at like walking and yoga and Tai Chi, but I have not seen any of them look at resistance training. And that's so crazy to me. And they're like, it doesn't seem like exercise improves hot flashes and other vasomotor things.
But then we're only looking at such a small actual grouping of people.
Right. And then here's the thing, and I learned this in one of my ex-phys classes, that, resistance training specifically helps to dilate those blood vessels going toward your skin too, to help release that heat. And the cool thing about that, and the reason why we would prescribe resistance training to someone, even if they have like high blood pressure, is because it expands these blood vessels for up to 16 hours after you've resistance trained. And so if you're doing that repetitively, you are constantly increasing these blood vessels and allow this heat to dissipate out of your body, essentially. And so I'm like, why haven't y'all looked at resistance training if like we know those mechanisms? So that's why in my head I'm like, well, that's why we're looking at this, and we're looking at resistance training specifically and with a chronic program, because obviously maybe not one session will make a difference, but over time, if it does, when would resistance training chronically start to improve these different symptoms that are very prevalent in perimenopause? Like the studies that I'm looking at, it's like they jump from like no hot flashes to like 79% of people have hot flashes once they hit that perimenopausal stage.
Oh, damn. So what age are you looking at?
So perimenopause, it does vary, but like typically you can basically assume anybody between like 40 to 50, sometimes a little over that, 40 to 55 are going to be in that perimenopausal phase. You're considered perimenopause whenever you don't have a consistent menses. So like a period every month. If you've gone about 3 months without it being consistent, then you could be considered perimenopause. You're considered menopause once you've gone an entire year without a menses. So essentially, we would just need to find people that fit within that criteria before they've reached menopause, but after that premenopausal stage. And they have like surveys and stuff you can give people to like break it down and figure out if they are fitting criteria.
And what do you consider a chronic bout, right? Because usually a lot of research, I feel like, is always like this single bout stuff, which makes me so frustrated.
Oh, I know.
Well, we didn't see any benefits here from our single leg extension, so it probably isn't good. It's like, well, hold on, like there's so much more that we know is going on here. So then, what are you looking at in terms of what do you consider chronic?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the program. The first study I did, we did a 7-week program. So that's it. I think typically anything over like 3 weeks would be considered chronic, maybe 4 weeks. I look at it as at least 2 mesocycles of training. So for us at that first study, it was originally supposed to be 8 weeks. And because of working with college students and spring break, we ended up having to cut it to 7. For my dissertation, it'll be 12 weeks. So it like is truly chronic at that point, because you're looking at like basically 4 mesocycles of training.
Did you have this like idea, or did you walk into
that?
Insanely cool.
It was so cool because like I walked into my PhD not having any idea what I was going to do. I knew I liked powerlifting. That was like it. And thankfully I, connected with my mentor, who didn't have the same like area as me, but like he is also very involved in training. And he competes in jujitsu. He's competed in weightlifting in the past, and he has followed my powerlifting program also, so that's been fun.
Very cool.
But he, really like brought me under his wing, and I've learned so much from him. And it was so funny because over the summer I was taking a summer class, and I'm very much of the mindset of I don't want to waste my time. Like, what can I look at, what can I read and study that might help me later down the road, or what can I write about in my classes that will help me down the road. And so we had to do a couple of different presentations in this class. So I asked my mentor, I'm like, hey, what topic, because we could pick any topic as long as we got it approved. What topic do you think I should look into that I haven't gotten to look into yet that might, be good for me in the future? And he was like, you should look into perimenopause. I think you would really like it. And it kind of fits within your realm of like females, and seeing, like, I look at both the resistance training and performance aspect in females, but I also look at cardiometabolic health in females. And that's where we kind of bridged our interests. He's very involved in cardiometabolic health. So I looked at perimenopause, wrote a research paper on it, and presented on it and all of that. And ever since then, that's when I had it in my head. I was like, okay, why are they only looking at endurance training and yoga and Tai Chi, and just making the assumption that training doesn't help these symptoms? Because I was like, in my head, I was like, okay, I guarantee that Jen Thompson didn't go through all these perimenopausal symptoms, or isn't going through all these perimenopausal symptoms,
Right.
and she's trained since like way before that phase would have started in her. I mean, she probably isn't even hitting it. I think she's 40, so she might be just hitting it. But I was like, I guarantee Jen Thompson isn't going to go through all of these different symptoms, and her risk for metabolic disease is not going to go up, and cardiovascular disease is not going to go up like drastically like we're seeing in all these sedentary or overweight individuals. And so that's where it like started. And so then my mentor, I have a PhD brother, I call him, so we're both under the same mentor, and he basically put it on us like, his job as our mentor is to make us independent researchers. And so up until that point, he had kind of helped us figure out and formulate research questions, but he was like, your dissertation is you. I want you to figure out what you want to look at. I'll help you, like, once we've got the details to make sure it's going to be dissertation worthy, but like the research question has to be your idea. And so, really just like from that class and how much I looked into it, it just stuck with me all through this previous like fall semester. And then whenever he put it on us to like put it all together, I was like, I want to know. I want to know if resistance training works for this stuff. Like, let's start recommending it for perimenopause and for menopause, and like actually showing these women that, yeah, you can mitigate, at least to an extent, some of these symptoms, and not be purely miserable with these hot flashes day in and day out and whatever else to come. Like, I mean, the different risks are tremendous. It's crazy that premenopause, your risk as a female for cardiovascular disease is so low. And then males are way higher even at that younger age. And then whenever you get into that menopausal stage, it flips so drastically, where females are like at 70% risk of cardiovascular disease compared to like 30% in males. And that's like approximate, but it is insane how quickly and how much it switches. And I'm like, there's got to be a way around that. And I think it's resistance training, but I have to prove it, or not prove it, but suggest it first.
So then when are you looking at, I guess, starting the suggestion and then hopefully carrying out the method? And also another question to hit you with two at the same time. Sorry, but I'm interested. How are you recording? What data are you looking at? What measures are you taking?
So, we're going to, I have to propose this project in the end of the spring semester. So I wouldn't be able to start my dissertation probably until the fall. It is a very, stringent process. You have to get your committee to agree to it, and make sure that everything looks right. And then you have to get it approved by the IRB, which is like a board of ethics at your school, who basically makes sure that the benefits outweigh the risks. And that can take a while. So once we get all of that back, that's whenever we can officially start the research process. And so we would plan to start in like in August of next year. And then from there, it would be like the 12-week program and writing it up. And I would propose I would defend my dissertation the following spring. So the things that we would want to look at, so we're going to look at a bunch of clinical strength markers. I would, love to look at like back squat 1RMs and bench press 1RMs. And we probably are going to do that too, just for my own, you know, yeah, benefit,
Sanity.
not sanity. But, a lot of what I'm going to be looking at is something we want to be able to translate to clinical settings. So we've looked at different markers of strength that they can use in clinical settings. So we're going to tie those in as additional performance markers. So it's like, hey, like you can make these suggestions based on their strength mark levels in these exercises. So we're going to do that. They also have validated a number of surveys that are looking at the symptomatology of perimenopausal and menopausal women. And we're going to give those surveys at different time points to our sample, our participants, so that we can see how it changes across the program. So we can look at, like they clearly have, hot flashes and headaches and whatever else. And then, 4 weeks into their training program, after one mesocycle, has that changed at all? At 8 weeks, has it changed at all the way through 12? We're also going to be recruiting the trained women and giving them those surveys so that we can see, we can compare them back to the sample we're truly looking at. And then we're also going to have a control group. Just makes that study a little bit stronger, especially with it being a dissertation. You want it to be as strong as possible. And so we'll have a control group that doesn't get the exercise training. So then we have like this spectrum essentially of highly symptomatic, no symptoms with our well-trained. And then along that continuum, how does the group that we're putting through a training program differ between those two extremes? We're also going to take some blood markers, but we're not completely sure what we'll look at yet. We're all blood trained. My mentor is, and me and my PhD brother. So if you're going to look at blood markers, you have to get funded because it is very pricey. So if we don't get funded for blood markers, we'll just basically freeze it and save it until funding comes around, and then you can look at something else for a different study. And then we'll also, one thing that you can look at that's really easy, and it doesn't, like you do have to get funding, but it's not too expensive. We're using it for a study I'm currently running, and it's looking at your estrogen levels, which will be very imperative to basically, we can figure out, what are perimenopausal estrogen levels. They've already confirmed what those levels are, and so we can just like make sure that they are within that measurement. But you can literally spit into a tube and you can measure estrogen through your spit, which I didn't know until this semester, so I thought that was pretty fascinating.
That's pretty fancy, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I think that's it for now. We'll probably think of some other things that we might want to tag on later on, or there's always like the ability, because whenever you do a big project like this, for a dissertation, you have to have 3 studies. And so I already have one that's going to count towards my dissertation. So I have to pull 2 studies from this one project, but you can always tag in small things and pull off another study for like down the road if you wanted to write something else up. So my mentor probably has ideas in his head about things to throw in there.
Where are you studying?
Where? University of North Alabama.
It seems like you guys are very like it's very well structured. It sounds like a nice lab.
Yeah. Oh man, it is so nice. So this is just kind of a um yeah, like just to show you the type of school that I'm at. I'm part of the first cohort of PhD students
Very cool.
and first full cohort. And so it is like a new program, but it really drew my attention because they want to develop you both as an exceptional professor as well as an exceptional researcher. And a lot of schools that you go to, it's kind of one or the other. You can go to an R1 school that's going to be highly research focused and not so much on the teaching side. And then you can go to other schools that are more like liberal arts schools, and they're going to be more focused on the teaching side. And so UNA really tried to, merge the two and make them both very like important in their program, which has been so fun because I've already gotten to, and that was really one of the main reasons I wanted to go there is because I wanted to be a professor in exercise science. I wanted to research too, but I came into school not knowing anything about research and never have done it before, and so didn't really know if I would love it as much as I have, and thankfully I have. But yeah, the fact that they have really tried to develop us as both is really cool. And the lab is brand new. So, like, I think we are the first group of students to be in their new lab. And it is very nice. Like, they re innovated a different building on campus. And so, and then it's so cool. So, they were more like cardiovascular lab equipment focused, but because I've come in and then very resistance training anaerobic focused, we had somebody donate a squat rack and plates and whatnot, and they've actually like dedicated a room to it. And so it's been really nice to have that type of support, especially being at this point the only one who's like interested in that sort of thing and studying that. But I think we'll have some other students come on this next year that are also involved in powerlifting, so that'll be fun for me. Have
I
some
think the
buddies.
powerlifting community is having so many more researchers go, like more
Yeah,
scientists, right? Just the platform itself is growing, and so you're having new penetration, and it's
yeah.
there's such a lack of research in resistance training, and it's
Especially in like the actual type of programming a power lifter would follow. And so that's really what I've been trying to bring to the table. Like with the first study I ran, like these girls went through a dedicated, legit powerlifting program. I mean, I incorporated daily undulated periodization, I incorporated conjugate periodization, and so that will kind of be the same thing with even these like the perimenopausal people. Obviously, it won't be to the same extent, but they will be strength training. Like they will have a barbell in their hands and they will be doing a program that you would do in the real world, not just like, let's do 10 sets of 10 of leg press and call it a day. Like, that's not what we do.
that's very far from what the actual stimulation of holding a barbell does, right? There's so
Yes.
much more of having your back loaded.
Right.
Well, that's super exciting. It seems like you're very passionate about what you're doing for not like
Yeah.
being a scientist per se, and then now in it. Like, it seems like you're definitely like running with it pretty well.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is
It's been
so?
fun.
So your focus is in this space of women, right? And so
Mhm.
the more that you do the research and learn about these things, does it translate to your current clientele, and what ages do you kind of work with? And then I would like to know more about the lady beef side of the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would definitely say a lot of what I've learned has translated. I go into each of my classes and I have like my mindset, it goes two different places. It's one, how can I relate this information to powerlifting and coaching? And also like two, how can I relate this to like what I'm going to be doing with my dissertation or my research so that it just makes sense to me as a professional on both sides of things because I'm both an academic and I'm a coach. And so it has been fun to really learn a lot of different things that have helped me as a coach with whether it be from the programming side, the nutrition side, at the metabolic side, it's just very interesting, and it's fun whenever you can link those things, because being like pretty much the only power lifter at school, obviously nothing anybody's teaching me is like this relates to powerlifting. Like they're not saying that, but I'm like seeing it and interpreting it as different ways that I can use it in my coaching and in my business. And then what was your other question?
If it translates over, and yes, it does. And then what ages do
That's
you
right.
work between?
Man, I work with all kinds of ages. I would say like young adult. I don't really have any youths yet, or right now, I mean. And then I'm middle age, so like I have clients in their 40s, and they're all powerlifters. So I only work with recreational and competitive powerlifters now. And so, yeah, it does vary. And so that's why I think too, I've really loved this perimenopausal side of things, because we're all heading that way, like all of my female athletes, you know? I don't want to just support them and their athletic ambitions right now where they are, but like I look ahead in the future. And that's my job as a coach, is to have not just a narrow focus on what you can accomplish and what I can do with you right now, but like what's our long-term goals. And I want them to have longevity in the sport of powerlifting if that's what they want to do. And so, you know, I'm heading that direction, and I have athletes who are already in that direction. And so I've just been able to figure out what does apply to my coaching business and run with it. And then I always have loved the science of it. And something that I try and do on my Instagram page is pull the science with the practicality, and like, you know, show in people like how metabolism relates to powerlifting, and taking these different concepts that we encounter in powerlifting and being like, here's the science behind it. Like, why do you work up to a heavy set of squats and then back down into like back off sets? Like, what's the science behind that? Or one of them that I thought was pretty fun that I did was, you know, every time anybody's in competition, you'll hear them talk about how they have nervous pee. Like they feel like they need to go to the bathroom and after like every attempt, but they're like, I just went, you know, why do I feel like I have that? I'm like, well, here's the science behind it. And so I just have so much fun figuring those things out and like bringing that to people's attention. So it has been fun, like merging the two.
What is the science behind it? Why do people have the P's?
It is a stress response. So whenever you are stressed out and that sympathetic nervous system is like basically triggered, it has this downstream effects where it basically causes your body to want to get out anything that would slow you down. It's like this animalistic effect, like whenever you know, if you're being attacked, like you need to be able to get away and quickly, so your body will get rid of anything in its system so that you can do so. Well, our bodies don't know the difference between being attacked by a bear or being nervous to squat in front of a crowd. And so that nervous pee is your body trying to like get rid of anything inside of it. So if you need to sprint away from danger, you can do so.
Very nice.
Yeah.
How long have you been coaching?
I have been coaching, so it's been like a transition. I studied exercise science in my undergrad back when I started college in 2010. So I started with like personal training, and then merged into powerlifting more so in 2016. I was a bodybuilder, and I quit bodybuilding in 2015 and started to experiment with powerlifting. And then in 2016, that's when I hired my first powerlifting coach and was really interested in becoming a powerlifting coach myself, and started just like experimenting with certain clients that were welcoming of being my guinea pig. They knew that I was new to it, and they were like, do whatever you want to me. I'll be your first powerlifting client. And then it was in 2017 that I really launched Lady Beef as a powerlifting coaching business. And then started only powerlifting coaching in 2019. So I stopped basically doing general population coaching and switched over to just powerlifting.
What was the reason? Why drop GP?
Oh boy. I had had enough of that. I had been working with that general population since 2012, and I've just always really enjoyed working with people, I guess, who are more similar to me. Like they wanted purpose behind their training. And not to say that all general population are the same way, because they're definitely not, but I do kind of categorize people as like general population as the people who just like come get trained by you, who don't really care what they're doing. They're more there for the social aspect. And I term athletes, I guess, very broadly, where I'm like, you have the recreational athletes who might not compete, but they still have like the goal of performance. And so they're very dedicated. They care about their training. They care about getting stronger. It's not just about either the social aspect or the physique aspect. And then you have your competitive athletes who are basically the same way, except they get on a podium or on a platform and get judged for it. So I had just, gotten to a place where I wanted to work solely with people who wanted to barbell train, who wanted to power lift, and they could be newbies. They don't have to have had a history with powerlifting or strength training, but they still have to fit under the umbrella, I guess, of a recreational powerlifter, somebody who wants to be under a barbell and to get better and get stronger. And so, yeah.
How does a client find you? If I go to ladybeef.com, what is my interaction going to be like?
What's your interaction going to be like? So ladybeefinc.com, because ladybeef.com was taken. But yeah, so if you go there, like you'll see, just like a lot of my personality. I'll give like the background of how like Lady Beef came to be, like where that name came from and who I am and what we're trying to achieve. Like to me, like Lady Beef, it encompasses a person who breaks stereotypes. Like if you're a female, like you can be feminine and you can be strong and you can be empowered by a barbell. And then I've got like my male beefs. We just call ourselves Team Beef to kind of encompass everybody.
Oh
But
yeah,
like they're awesome and they're so supportive and they want to be coached by, they call me Coach Beef.
nice.
And so we're just like, we're a fun family, and I'm just trying to show people that you can be whoever you want to be, and you can be empowered by the barbell. You can be successful in the sport of powerlifting even if you don't have like an athletic background. Like it is for everybody. And my whole team tries to portray that too. So I have an assistant coach. His name's Arnold, and I love that he's on the team. Like for whatever reason, you always wanted to have like a male coach on the team too, just to kind of show. Because one of the questions I'm often asked is, do you coach males? And I'm like, absolutely. I love my male clients. And so having him on board has kind of helped to like show that like, yes, like we accept everybody. And then we have our registered dietitian, Lexi. And so she helps with the nutrition aspect. And she can obviously go so much far beyond what me and Arnold can do with nutrition. And so it's really awesome to have her help as well. And we're all just really down to earth people that, love to lift and love to support our athletes and love to get them on the podium and win medals and and get them to the next level and all of that jazz.
It seems like it's doing pretty well. Like it's growing. I mean, the fact that you have an
Yeah.
RD and you have both yourself and then an assistant coach, it seems like things are moving in the right direction. What started why get into fitness? What was your purpose of coming into the world of fitness?
Yeah, so I actually grew up with rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and I was diagnosed with that when I was like 7, I think. And like it was to the extent where my parents had to start homeschooling me because I'd wake up and like couldn't move. Like my joints just did not work and they were very
Damn.
swollen. Yeah, and it was from that very early age that I was basically forced to learn how imperative movement and exercise was. Because like my mom, she was very smart in this, and like it was funny because like rheumatoid arthritis for a 7-year-old was not a thing, not very common, to their knowledge anyways. And instead of like, babying me whenever, my joints would swell, she put me in dance and gymnastics and eventually baton twirling. And that was the sport that I really took off with. And when I was about 15 years old, and I mean, I was twirling every single day. And I think that that was such a good sport for my joints because, like, one of the main things that would get really janky were my wrists and fingers. And so I'm sitting there twisting my wrist and running this baton through my fingers and like moving my arms around. And I think really overall that helped so much to put me in remission around the age of 15 to 16. And so didn't have any issues between like or toward the end of my high school years. And then when I started college, I went into school as a business major for the first semester because I wanted to own a baton twirling studio. Shocker.
Nice.
And yeah, you grow up whenever you're like homeschooled and you're in this like really small like area, like you have no idea what's out there. So it was like baton twirling is all I know. I'm gonna own a baton twirling studio.
The options are endless now. What's going on? I mean,
right. And you have no idea. So went to school for that, and very soon into college, I wasn't twirling as often as I had been, and I didn't know exercise outside of that. And I started to notice that it was like coming back. Like I was all of a sudden having issues with my fingers. Like I just remember very specifically not being able to hold onto a fork without my hands, like wanting to just like be cut off. Like it would swell and it would hurt so bad. So that's when I like started looking into like actual exercising more often. And then my wheels started turning and I was like, I don't want to own just a baton twirling studio. I want the parents to be able to do something. What if I add a gym inside this baton twirling studio? Somehow wound up in an advisor's office for exercise science that put me in exercise science. And after I like sat in that first kinesiology class, it was like, I was set. I was like, I love this. Light bulbs going off everywhere. I had never been like a good student and somebody who like excelled in anything. I wasn't like a math person or anything like that. Definitely not a science person. And so for everything to just kind of like click and for me to love to learn about something was a really huge moment for me. And so that's when I really started to put into practice what I was learning in my kinesiology class about different like joint movements in the gym. So I would basically try and like, I was a very visual learner and I would try and just go to the gym and like figure out what I was learning in the classroom. And so it really just took off from there. I started to notice a big difference in how I was feeling again. And I guess, that I wouldn't say it didn't like leave remission, whatever that word is, but I was definitely feeling like my arthritis was coming back. And so getting back into being more active, kind of stalled that and halted it where it was. And so, yeah, it just like grew from there. I was, in exercise science. So I was making friends that were also into exercise and learning from them. Whenever I was a sophomore, I met my first boss who owned a gym, and I started shadowing and interning for them, and then started working for a gym that was very bodybuilding focused, which is what got me into bodybuilding, competing for a couple of years. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
How is competing in bodybuilding versus in powerlifting?
It's so much more fun to compete in powerlifting.
Good.
Oh man,
I'm glad I didn't miss out on much in that, getting into that space.
Oh my God. It is a really cool experience, but nobody prepared me for the after meet or after competition experience. And this was really before, social media took off and like Instagram was very new. It was when we had all those really horrible filters and grainy pictures, and I was actually on an iPod, not an iPhone. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I just wasn't prepared for how dieting that hard would affect me after competing. And so it really took me through this tailspin of an eating disorder, a binge eating disorder. And so it was really like me getting out of that is how I was able to get past all those issues that I had developed over that time. And it was really powerlifting that pulled me completely out of that, because once I started competing and really focusing on the performance aspect of my training, and not like trying to diet down constantly, that really, pulled me out of those eating patterns. And so, yeah, definitely more of a fan of powerlifting for myself, anyways. I think the sport of bodybuilding is amazing and incredible. And it's come such a long way, too, with people being more vocal about how to approach after a competition. But at that time and at my age, too, I was very young. I just don't think that I was like mentally or physically ready for that.
That sport, I think, I think that's very interesting, and it takes a lot of discipline and dedication, but I feel that it can maybe not be so good for, I think, eating disorders, and then also body dysmorphia to like an extreme. And I think
Sadly,
that
yes.
I think that it can be cool, but I think that powerlifting is and maybe it's just because I'm biased here, but I think powerlifting is something that is able to be accessed by a large population of individuals that ultimately can change a lot more aspects of their life that they didn't really go into expecting, like the eating, the sleeping, the push off of osteoporosis. It's like, you get a DEXA scan from someone who's never lifted a weight in their life, and then the person that's been lifting for years, you're going to see that bone density is infinitely higher, and they're almost guaranteed to not even go into becoming osteoporotic in their future.
Or sarcopenia.
It's big, and I think it makes a better athlete and makes a better person at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you can leave the sport of powerlifting and still do the big three, and they're still good for you. You should always know how to squat.
Right.
Maybe do some more overhead movements, because bench, makes us very anteriorly dominant, and not a lot of people like to focus on the posterior chain. But I think ultimately it's a growing sport because it's so accessible and also changes people's lives infinitely better than I think that bodybuilding does. I think bodybuilding is definitely
from both the physical and mental aspect, for sure.
It's a scary sport to me. It really, and I think that maybe on the outside perspective, it seems what I would imagine to be healthy. Like, they're promoting this physique, which I think the general population, if they don't understand, we perceive that as like a set of beauty, or like real true health. But then if you really dive into it and look at it,
it's not attainable. Like, it's very temporary that they're in those like levels of lean. But yeah, you're right. And a lot of times, what's even worse too is a lot of people will just kind of like sign up. And I don't know, I'm not in the bodybuilding realm anymore, so this is more of me speaking of like when I was. But I knew a lot of people who would sign up for bodybuilding shows who had never consistently resistance trained. They were doing it just to lose weight. And it's like, that's not. Yeah, and so it's like, first of all, you're setting yourself up for failure, and two, like, there are so much more attainable and like sustainable ways to lose weight than doing something as drastic as a bodybuilding competition.
A long-term goal is always the thing. And you said that earlier about your clients. You're not looking at them just to have them for the next 12 weeks for this competition. You're looking at having them compete for the next years. Like, what am I going to be able to do to set you up that we're going to work on our mobility, our flexibility, all of these niches, and these niches inside this big grand space to make you into a better athlete and then a better person. Because I don't want you leaving the gym feeling like, ow, my back, or ow, my hip. How can we navigate around those things to make sure that this isn't an aid to your life and not a detriment, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it sets the difference between a highly educated coach, and somebody who I think we all grew up with them, like our high school coaches that were like just 5x5 every single day, and we're just gonna like pound it out. It doesn't really matter form. Like we're just trying to like load the bar up and lift heavy things.
Right.
Because like, oh, we need to be ready for football season. And then after football, well,
Hmm.
you're going to baseball. I don't really care about you anymore. And it's like,
Right.
well, I could be making you better now and for baseball and then for me again next year. Like
Right.
think bigger picture here.
Yeah.
I like that you approach it that way.
Well, thanks. Yeah, my
So
coach, he told me a while back, or asked me a while back, you know, if you had to choose whether you were, like a world champion or whatever in 5 years, but then hurt yourself to the point where you never could compete or powerlift again, or would you rather be, competing and powerlifting until you're 60, 70 years old? And I was like, I definitely am never going to hit the podium anyways. But even then, like, I would choose to be lifting until, I was 70, 80, 90, hopefully years old. And I mean, that's going to be different for everybody. And I don't think that it's one or the other. I think that obviously we have many amazing athletes who are world champions that are going to be in the sport for a long time. But you still have to play that, role in that, find that balance so that you can be both successful and in this long term. And so, yeah, I think you have to, figure out one, what you want, and two, like have a coach that can support what your goals are, but also support, that the athlete doesn't always know what's best, and that like you do have the bigger picture in mind. They might be more concerned about medaling at their next competition, and that is achievable and something the coach should work with them towards. But like, you're not going to push them to the point where they break down during that competition, and they're out of the sport for a while.
all good things. So how do you deal with online coaching? And do you like online coaching? Like, are you having Zoom with people? Like, yes. So then why? Because I feel like online coaching is kind of difficult at times.
Yeah, no, I love remote coaching. And so I think it does help that I do work primarily with recreational and competitive lifters. Even if they are beginner lifters, they kind of like they've been training to some extent for a while, to the point where I don't have to like watch them in the moment. So the way that I go about online coaching is I have their training program put together, and I have them all upload videos of their squat, bench, and deadlift. I'll have them upload videos of like top sets, as well as if like it's like a higher set and rep scheme. I'm like, I want to see the first and last so that I can see how things change, or hopefully they stay consistent within a longer volume. And then they'll upload it, and I'll go in and look at their videos. And if there's anything that I want to tweak or correct, then I will make like either comment on the video, or sometimes I will record a video walking them through something if I think that that will get across to them a lot easier. Some people are very pictorial learners. So if I think that, they're not going to understand me writing something out, I will like talk it out with them. And then I also just have like this like open door policy that if you need to send me a video and get me to either look at something right then and there or correct it, or if it's an accessory exercise and you just want to make sure that you're doing it right, you can just send it to me, text it to me anytime, and I'll do that for you also. So it's really just like, a family, a community. We're not very like, I guess, over professional, where it's like you're not allowed to text me. Like, please text me if you need my help. But yeah, so we do that. And then at the end of each of their training weeks, they have a check-in form, and I just ask a bunch of like biofeedback type questions. And it also lets me know that they finished their training week, so I can pull it up, look and see how everything went, look at the videos and make sure that the RPEs will match up. Sometimes somebody will be like, that was an RPE of 9, and then it moved like butter. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. So, got to teach you what RPEs mean. Or vice versa. Somebody will be like, that was a 5. And I'm like, you could not have done one more. That is not true. And so, anyways, I'll go through, make sure everything looks right, and then continue to progress their program. But yeah, so it's pretty simple. I think sometimes people overcomplicate coaching, but we make a plan and we execute that plan.
What platform are you using? You said that you have them upload stuff. Do you have it on your website or?
We just use Google Drive. So I
Nice.
will create a folder for each of my clients. And in that folder, they have their training template that they'll pull open. It's got everything in there from their training days and weeks. And they'll just type in the loads that they use, their RPE for each exercise. If they have any personal notes that they want to put in for themselves or for me to see. I also track perceived recovery scores before their training session. So essentially, it's just a scale of 1 to 10 on how recovered you feel going into the session. And then they also rate how difficult the session was at the end of it. And those, just little numbers like that will give me indication of, for instance, like when a deload is actually needed versus just like giving people one when they might be totally fine and recovered. And then they've got their nutrition spreadsheet in there too. And then I have a folder for all their videos. And so they just know to go in there by at least the end of each week and upload their videos from that specific week so that I can go in there, check it all out, and continue from there.
I'd love
All
to
in
see
one place.
I'd love to see a screenshot of I assume you're using like an Excel sheet. I'd love to
Yeah,
see like a screenshot of your Excel sheet, and
I will happily send it to you.
yes, I'm excited. I'll share with you mine. I use Excel as well, or Google the Google Sheets.
Yeah.
But I think I like you have a lot of different points of data that I like. I like the pre-workout, like how recovered do you feel? I think that's huge. I don't know why I never thought about that, but that's
It is easy.
massive.
It's
So
really
easy.
funny. So one of the faculty members of our school, Dr. Green, he's the one that like came up with that scale. So if you like research perceived recovery score and you see green on these studies, like he's our dean.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You're in a good place, apparently.
Right. But yeah, so it's just like small things like that. And we'll track I track their volume load and their competition lift so that we can make sure that they're progressing but not like overly spiking any volume anywhere, just to prevent like any aches and pains. And like if you spike volume too high too quickly, like pretty much every time they're gonna be like, my elbows hurt, my knees hurt, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably why. And so you want to make sure you're watching those trends. And then, yeah, that's pretty much about it. I have like one client who's currently working on helping me with different graphs out of this data because I'm not like some Excel spreadsheet queen by any means. I can figure out me some drop down menus and some sums and ifs and just different things like that. But he can put together these graphs and I'm like, that'd be fantastic. So we all are always trying to figure out what else we can look at and what other data we can look at because I'm still learning in that aspect too. But it's also helped like being in stats in school. I'm like, and then again, that's another one of those areas where I'm like, I could apply this to powerlifting. Run these stats on everybody.
Gain all this data for that I can look at and ultimately make them better. But it's like selfishly like so fun for you to do it, and the client's just like, okay, weirdo. Like, why are we doing?
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
it's
don't
okay.
worry about it. It's free.
I love that. How many clients do you have?
I currently have my athletes capped at 20. So whenever
Nice.
I started my PhD, I actually capped it at 10. That's whenever I brought on Arnold and started like shoving him clients and just, trying to take something off of my plate. And then we have another we actually do coach general population clients, but I just have another coach for that. And she's actually having to leave us for a temporary basis while she gets her MBA. And then she plans on coming back. But right now, our registered dietitian, who is also a CPT, she's going to be handling the general population clients. So we do coach them. I just don't specifically coach them, and Arnold doesn't specifically coach them. But yeah, so capped it at 10 because I was like, I don't know how I can both be a coach, a brand new PhD student. I hadn't been in a classroom setting since I graduated from undergrad in 2014 because my master's was online. So, and then I'm also a mom. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do all these things. So capped it at 10. And then over the spring, I was like, okay, I kind of think I have a handle on this. So capped it at 15. And then at the like this semester going into next semester, I was like, okay, cap it at 20. So I grow as I feel like I can handle it without putting too much on my plate. And then for anybody else that comes to us, I just give them over to our other coaches.
I want to hear your perspective on velocity-based training, and if you think that would be a benefit for your athletes, and then if you know, whatever your main perspective may be.
Yeah, so velocity-based training is very cool. I was actually going to look at that with one of my previous studies, but we didn't get the velocity-based unit in time. But I think it's a great measurement tool. It's just another assessment that you can use, you know, especially for like if you're not so much focused on the load on the bar. Sometimes you're just wanting to focus on speed, or, you know, you can kind of combine the two and use their speed almost as an assessment to their progress. Like if you're looking, say, at like 85% of their max and how it moved at the beginning of a cycle versus at the end of a cycle, that can be a measure of progress. And so I think there's a bunch of different uses for it. Obviously, it's not accessible to everybody. The really nice ones are very pricey. But I've heard good things about different apps that they have right now, where you can just basically video it. And obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but it's kind of like a weight scale where it might not be like completely valid, but it can still be reliable. And if it's just showing you those patterns and trends over time, then I don't see anything wrong with like using something that might not be completely perfect. But yeah, I think it's a great tool, but I don't think it's like a you must have it or you must use it kind of tool. I think there's other ways to go about measuring progress or measuring speed.
That's fair. I feel like for online coaching, I feel like it would be a good additive to have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also it's not everyone can.
But who's buying the VBT tool for the client? You know,
yeah,
like
right.
if
Exactly.
they want to buy it, all for it. We can use it. But I would never approach a client and be like, I need you to buy a VBT tool. I mean, those things are they can be thousands of dollars.
They're insane. I think there's some new ones that like will stick onto the bar and you connect with your app, and then after the fact it'll load all that data, which I think is really cool. They're a little bit more affordable, but even then you're still dropping $500 on a VBT, which is kind of
it's not accessible for everybody. I wouldn't be buying that. I love powerlifting and I love to make progress, but I'm not buying $500 cord right now.
You're really leading this from the front. Like you're growing this business into what I think can like grow into something that's very large. What is your goal with the business?
Oh man, my goal is to take my athletes to the top of any competition they're in, whether that is whichever federation that is too, like whether you're in USAPL, like I want you a national champion and I want you to have any and all opportunities that you want. If I have clients who are new to powerlifting and their goal is to make it to nationals, like my goal is your goal. I want to get you to the point where you go to nationals. If you're in PA now, like, and you want to make the world team, I want you to make the world team. My goal is whatever my athletes' goals are. And I mean, I want Lady Beef to be a force to be reckoned with. Like, I want us to be known for producing exceptional and successful powerlifters. And so, yeah, like that would definitely be my goal. I want to take this thing as far as we can. I want to support my athletes. I want to bring on more professionals that can help in different areas that is outside of my scope. And I just want to I want to see what we can do. And I'm fine with like how long that takes too, like we probably could have added more coaches and a registered dietitian and like like weightlifting. I kind of want to bring on a weightlifting coach at some point. Like we could have grown at a much faster pace than I would say we have. Like I've been Lady Beef has been a thing since 2013, and we became a coaching business in 2017 and more powerlifting focused in 2019. And that's whenever we added our first coach. But, I want to make sure we're bringing on the right people at the right times for our athletes and not, and, I'm having to juggle so many different roles at this stage in my life that I'm like, I just want to do everything the right way. And so if that means like, taking our time with where we currently are and just growing and adding things as, opportunities are presented to us, I think that that's the right route for us, at least.
I think as much of this, as much as this podcast is very athlete related and in maybe some also in the science world as well. I also am very interested in learning how people grow their businesses and the entrepreneurship side of it. And I mean, I think entrepreneurs are especially in this space are growing in number quite a bit. And so if you don't mind, I'm interested in your rationale with starting the business, how it like finding, how do you start your first LLC? How did you go through the process of like hiring somebody? Why? How did you know it was the right time? Are we taking loans to do this kind of stuff? Or is it just like purely on you?
Yeah. So I would say, one, like my husband is very like financial brain. So he does help a lot with like, if I have an idea, I kind of like talk it out with him. Like, does it make sense to do this yet? But then I also, I am not financially savvy by any means. I don't get accounting. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I am a coach. That is all. So I recognize when I have to outsource. And so whenever we really started to push Lady Beef as a business, I went and found me an accountant. I was like, hey, I don't want to go to jail. What do I need to track? What do I need to do to make sure that I'm doing this the right way? And then this year I actually hired a bookkeeper because it was just like, again, like I knew whenever my plate was just being too full and like me tracking everything each month was just a lot on top of like PhD stuff, toddler stuff, coaching stuff. So I have a bookkeeper that keeps track of everything for me each month. And then, whenever tax season comes around, like she helps with all of that stuff. So I just, I don't try and do everything on my own. And I certainly am kind of more like an old dog that doesn't learn new tricks. So I'm not going to try and teach myself something whenever I really don't have the time or capacity to. So I get help. And for the whole like LLC, S Corp thing, that's actually been a real whirlwind because I have had a few different accountants since we started, and everybody says different things. And so I think we started as an LLC. I think my dad's big into like business stuff and he made us an LLC. And then I had an accountant who was like, no, you should be an S Corp. You get better, like, I don't know, benefits or whatever it is. And then my new bookkeeper was like, no, you're not supposed to be an S Corp. And so I'm like, okay, y'all take care of it. I'm just gonna like let y'all figure all of this out. So I think right now we're still an S Corp, but I think there's just like certain things that you have to do as an S Corp that I wasn't doing and that my previous accountants hadn't like conveyed to me that you had to do. And so my current bookkeeper is trying to like work all those things out. But yeah, I'm probably like the worst person to ask about like how to go about creating a business because I feel like we're still like solidifying things because again, it's very hard to know what to do whenever you have like different people telling you different things and that's not your realm of expertise. So yeah.
So delegating is, I think, the overall note here. The way you're able to it and continue to grow is to delegate, and I think that a lot more people probably should delegate because you don't.
I think you should delegate, and also one thing I guess I would say that I have learned is to like in our field, we have coaches for different things, right? Like we have powerlifting coaches and personal trainers and weightlifting coaches. And you might be in the same field, but you have a different area of expertise, right? And I think that is the same way with businesses. So, I mean, it took me too long, but I figured out, I needed an accountant who her focus and her area was working with like fitness and coaching. And so like she has been able to help a whole lot more because she understands what I do and what my business does. And so that she knows, what I fall under and the different things that I need to track and whatever else, and like how to go about certain things that those other professionals just might not have been knowledgeable of because they mainly worked with other places. They might have worked with small businesses, but it's a little bit different.
Very cool. Well, I think I think still in the realm of, I think hopefully my goal is that somebody listens to this, and if they are trying to start a business or get into this space, that they can get like maybe some nuggets that they can be like, oh, okay, well,
right.
This is what I need to find. This is what I need to look for. So I think ultimately, you did do that. So what is your goal moving forward after the PhD?
After the PhD, so I do want to find a position as a faculty member where I would take on the role as a professor, also be in the research space. But with that, like I'll always have Lady Beef connected to it. Like I try and like present myself as both. Like I am all of these different hats. I am a professor, a researcher, and a coach. And so all of those things in my professional career will develop and will grow. And so I want to, have that position where I get to coach people that were me once. I love teaching people that were me once. And I just love talking to students, and especially students who are in exercise science and kind of like have some inkling of what they want to do and that they love, the science of it. And so I just love to get excited and teach them. And I want to do the same with my athletes. I think that's why I'm so geared towards athletes, because they also have that mindset. They're like, hey, why am I doing this? And I'm like, well, I would love to tell you. And so I just love to coach them and teach them along the way. And so we're all just going to continue to progress and grow and take on whatever each year hands us.
I like it. Is there a specific class that you would like to teach?
Oh man, I taught exercise physiology this past semester, and that was my ultimate goal. Like I came into school and I was like, I want to teach XPhys. XPhys when I was in undergrad was a hot mess, a complete nightmare. I was not good at it. I had a very difficult time like connecting the dots between like the cellular level. I can visualize muscles and movement all day, but you take it down to the cellular level and you've lost me. But somehow through the years, I have gained such an appreciation and love for that topic. And I wanted to be put in the position of a professor for exercise physiology for the me. Like I had students this semester who I saw me in. I was like, this is not clicking in them. Like it's like they get it, but then whenever they have to repeat it or they have to put it into practice and apply it, it's not there. And I'm like, I get it. I was you. And so to be the teacher that I needed when I was an undergrad was just so fulfilling. And it just like melted my heart to like be there for these students and be like, hey, I get it. I got a C or a D or whatever it was in XPhys when I was here. And then look at me now. I'm literally teaching it to you now. You can do this and I'm going to help you get through it. So that is the class that I really came to school looking forward to teaching. And I was just so thankful that I've already gotten the chance to do that. And I just see myself definitely teaching that in the future. I also was really interested in biomechanics when I was an undergrad, and I had a biomechanics class, but they don't have biomechanics at the school that I'm currently at. So I kind of like look forward to maybe doing some kind of hybrid kinesiology biomechanics type class where I can kind of pull the two things together. So maybe that's in my future too, but I would definitely say XPhys is like my little area.
What are the chances that that would have been like? Imagine you being back in undergrad and be imagining that you're going to be the person that's going to be teaching this
Oh
class.
no, never would have seen, never would have expected it. If I, it's so funny. I saw this, whenever we were younger, we would Facebook status like the most random things, and now you have these time hops come up from like 10 plus years ago, and it was like, why did I say that? And
For
but
sure.
but I had this status that popped up in my time hop a few weeks ago, and it was like me saying that I had just finished my last science class, and I was thankful that I would never have to take science again. And I was like, LOL, if I could show my previous self what I was doing now. So funny. But, I used to think that, fifth year seniors and grad students were crazy. Why would you want to stay in school that long? And here we are. So, yeah, it's funny how
What's
time changes.
what switched? Why make the decision to end up going to get the master's after you finish your undergrad? Like, did that first exercise physiology class make that much of an impact?
No, 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 not at all. I had no interest in ex phys actually when I started my master's. It was really after, like during and after my master's that I was. But my the reason I went back to school for my master's was to improve my knowledge of coaching powerlifting actually. So I had started powerlifting, competing in powerlifting, and I just wanted to learn more about programming and coaching and, just improve my education a little bit more. And so I found a school that was it was Concordia University Chicago, and they had an online master's degree program in applied exercise science. And so you could specialize in different areas, one of them being strength and conditioning, and also another one called human movement science. And it was kind of like taking like the athletic programming aspect with more of like the rehabilitation, like aches and pains programming. And like a majority of that program was us writing programs and getting feedback. And so that was really beneficial to me as a coach because I was not any longer just like trying to learn from textbooks and seeing if it worked on my clients, but I was getting feedback from people that had been coaching for ages. And so that was super beneficial, I think. And I really appreciated that program for that aspect, though it was lacking in the science aspect. And so that's when I was in those classes for the science, I was like, I need more help. Like it was very like homeschooly where I was like reading the textbook and then like writing a little discussion online. I was like, I'm not retaining any of this, but I want to.
Yeah.
And so that really, and I wanted to teach it. All of a sudden I was like, man, I really want to like teach this to people. I don't know why, but I really want to. And so that's whenever I was like, I think I want to do my PhD after this, but I don't want my PhD to be online. Like I needed to be in person with a teacher that could help me understand this stuff. And then my first semester of my PhD, it didn't take long for my mentor to realize how very little I remembered or retained or knew about exercise physiology. And so that whole first semester, I would just like spend time in his office while we went over just basic stuff. And it was so funny because I was like literally a year between me being in his office teaching me what the heck a neuromuscular junction was to a
Nice.
year later teaching it to undergrad students. Like I had known this information my whole life. Like it was just so funny. And so I think that was really what helped them to connect with me, those students, because I was like, I get it. I was like literally a year ago, I was learning this. So I'm not that different from you guys. So y'all can learn it too. But yeah, so it just, I think it's funny how life happens and you just, little things will just start to happen and pile on and you realize, hey, I want to take this further. And I've always been a pretty ambitious person, and if I get it in my head that I want to do something, I do it pretty immediately. I remember whenever I told my husband, I had been contemplating going back to school for my master's for months. It was like January of 2019, I started looking into programs. I won't bring it up until I've made the decision, though. So it was like that summer, me and my husband were on a vacation. And I was like, hey, I think I want to go back to school for my master's. literally the next day I was applying to programs, like
Oh my
on our
lord.
way back home. I was already online applying to programs. And I shit you not, a week later I was starting my master's.
Oh my.
And my poor husband is just like, I thought we were still like in the discussion phase of this. I didn't realize this was like a thing. And I was like,
You-
oh no, I've been considering this since January. I've already been past the discussion phase in my own brain.
I am the opposite. I want to like talk about it as much as I can, and then I'll end
So
up
funny.
being like, I either do it or I don't. But there's a lot of like outward, because I feel like I can manifest something if I talk about it enough, and I really want it to be that part of that. I want to commit to that part of my life, then I will. But I need to go to like really talking a lot about it. I'm like, all right, either I'm really sold, like I've sold myself on this, or I haven't. I had the
Right.
same kind of experience with my master's. It was like, I really feel like it had been probably like a year and a half since undergrad, and I finally just woke up and I was like, we're going to do it. I need to hurry up. And then, so I continued to talk about it. This is a goal I always wanted to do. And then I applied, and within 1 week I had started classes. I was also an online master's.
It's funny how fast those programs let you start. It's like, oh snap, okay.
It was weird. It's like they hadn't even got my GRE yet. I had just taken my
Right.
GRE like
Oh
a couple
man,
days
I
ago.
was so thankful I didn't have to take that. I didn't have to take that for either, let me tell you. So I guess like Concordia didn't require it, which was like one of my requirements when I was looking into schools, because I had been out of college for so long. I was like, there's no way in God's green earth that I'm going to pass no GRE. Not happening. I was never good at standardized tests. Like, let me reiterate, I was homeschooled. Like, we did not do well in standardized testing. And I got lucky as heck with my PhD because they were still not accepting GREs because of COVID. And I was like,
Nice.
I'm not excited about COVID by any means. It really impacted our family, but oh man, am I thankful for that.
The little things. The GRE sucks. It's like standardized tests are the worst, and I had to take
Awful.
mine. But thankfully, they didn't even look at my GRE before they accepted me. I was like, all right, like cool. This is the best case scenario, because I
Right.
can guarantee you that my score probably sucks. So thank you for recommendation letters, and we are in. Oh
Yes.
my god. I've wanted to do my PhD. I've considered a PhD on multiple different things, and the way you talk about it makes me like, ooh, right?
I know you should. When people tell me that they're interested in PhD, I'm like, do it. I'll support you.
And a lot of
I
times
mean-
it's free, so like, especially in STEM, and so I mean, and you can also get a stipend. But I think
Mhm.
it's like, is this going to be something that is going to change my life, or is it going to add a benefit to where I
Yeah,
want
that's
to go
what you
in
have
the
to
future?
figure out. Because, like, if I were just wanting to coach after this, then there would be no reason for me to be pursuing a PhD.
Yeah.
Like, the reason you pursue a PhD is because it puts you in a position that you want to work. And, like, I want to be a professor to upper level college students. If I just wanted to teach undergrads, or if I just wanted to teach at like a community college, I could do that with a master's. So you just have to figure out like what exactly you think you want to do with it. And you might not know specifically. I knew going into it that I wanted to be able to teach grad students, upper level students, people who already had an inkling of what they wanted to do. Because that's what I like in coaching. Like, I like to coach people and educate athletes that are already in this game. They already know what they want to do, and they want to know how they can succeed. That's just who I like to work with. And so I knew that that's what I wanted. I knew I wanted to try research. For my master's, since it was an online program, so you probably did the same, but we had like a capstone project.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, since I couldn't do a thesis, I still wanted to publish a paper though. So my capstone project was I wrote with my other mentor, my first mentor. He helped me with writing my first publication. And it was a review article. So it wasn't an experimental trial, but it still like gave me the opportunity to get my name in a publication. That's what I wanted. And so after doing that, I was like, man, I really want to do like a real study. And so getting to do that my first year of my PhD was super fun, and just kind of, keeps like adding on, like, okay, I feel like I'm in the right place. Like, this is for me. And every semester something happens where I'm like, I'm definitely doing the right thing. Like, this is the right place for me. And so I feel like as long as I feel that way, even when I'm overwhelmed with work, even when I'm stressed out with whatever is going on, and like I have been stressed out in like this period of time in my PhD more than I ever have in my entire life. I've always been a crier and an emotional person, but it is like here now. Like, anything will send me over the edge. It's not the funnest thing. It's so bad. I have cried so many times in my poor mentor's office, and I'm like, you probably had no idea this is what you were signing up for. But, I'll have little things happen where it's just like, okay, like, thank you, God, for just showing me this little like bit of like, you're doing what I've placed you here to do.
I think that the PhD, just having doctor in front of your name, is like I feel like I'm definitely an extremist, and so I have the master's. I'm like, well, I might as well just get the damn PhD. Like,
right?
I just
2 years,
it's like
3 years, whatever.
It's 3 or 4 years, right? It's like a quick stamp. Okay, like this one's done. It's a checklist. Like we're over. Like I've won the game of academia in some sense. I got published in undergrad, and it was a really cool feeling. Like,
yeah.
I think that I'm no longer in exercise physiology in that space. I now I'm a project manager for a construction company, and the reason that I took the job was I always felt that there was not enough money in the world of exercise physiology and being a coach. I was always very worried that I was going to become a high school coach making like $60,000 a year, and then working in insane amounts, and then with I think a lot of times, unfortunately, with a support system that isn't very big on like teaching the kids on the science behind what this thing is. But that's initially what got me so involved with the sport of powerlifting. And I was like, what is the difference between a bodybuilding athlete and a power lifter? And at the time I was in high school, and I was like, oh, there's probably like some like big genetic differences between these two. Little I know it's more about training. Like, there's definitely genetic differences at the very top, but ultimately it's training. And so before I had gotten to undergrad, I had sent an email to Dr. Lightfoot's. I don't know if you know Dr. Lightfoot. He's a genetic researcher here at A&M at the Huffines Institute. And I was like, hey, I just have a quick question. I don't know if you can give me any background or information. I had already been accepted to A&M at that point. And so I was like, well, and maybe when I get up there, we can chat. And so I ended up following up with him when I got here. And then it just took me on this like rabbit hole of like really appreciating science, and then being more involved with the sport of powerlifting, and just appreciating a little more, and then loving to teach people about it. But I was always so nervous that there wasn't going to be enough financial backing. Not for the I like nice things. I want to go to the nice hotel.
Totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's those little luxuries that aren't so little. Like, I want to be able to take a flight. I have this crazy idea that I can go on a first class to somewhere in Europe. That kind of lifestyle that I feel like a lot of coaches don't have. But then I'm starting to realize a little bit that both researchers, like if you get some good grants, like you can, professors do okay. The professors can do real okay. So it's definitely a space that the more that I talk to you, it's like, oh man, that definitely, it was a good time. I love being in the lab. I love being, even the little things like working on the DEXA scan was so fun. Like,
that's so cool. You got to do that as an undergrad. Yeah, I was very much like you, like, except I didn't have any guidance in undergrad as to what we could do with our degree. And so like I got to volunteer as a participant in some research, but like I never got to like be hands-on with it. And so I've loved having undergrads be on my research team. And I have one young lady who, she has been so involved in my study from this spring that I want her to be a co-author on the paper. And so I think it's really cool that you got to be a co-author in undergrad. And I love to like spark that interest in younger ones. So I think that that is really cool that they set that spark in you at such a, I guess you could say, early young age. We were pretty early young in our early 20s.
Yeah. I mean,
But
at
yeah.
that point, I had gotten published my junior year or senior year of undergrad and co-author, right? But it was just I got to work with blood.
That's
I
awesome.
got to take blood from clients, and then like we'd show up at 5 a.m. and we ran the FitJoy bars. I don't know if you know FitJoy, the company.
Yeah.
So we did the research on the saccharide that's what we were looking at. We were looking at the saccharide that was inside the bar and how that was different than a glucose package. So
Okay.
we're taking dabs and doing glucose monitoring, and then we're
Yeah.
running them through a real protocol where they're like back squatting and benching and hitting 1 RMs because at that point I was definitely in the world of powerlifting. It's like, this is my jam. I love this. I want to be here for all the studies. I'm going to be here for every session. And it was just a wonderful time of
I
life.
love
And
that.
it's just, who knows? I got offered the PhD route at that lab
Mhm.
before. I didn't know that you didn't have to get a master's, and so at that point that lab was like, hey, if you wanted to apply for it, you can go ahead and you can come in. And at that point, I had started sales in for a construction company. I was like, well, I'm kind of gonna follow the money a little bit here. Like, I don't have the most support from home, so I need to take the job that's going to pay me more.
Right.
But oh man, it's just
Timing is everything, and that might have not been the time then, but you don't have to, that doesn't mean it's not going to be the right time down the road if that's still something that's like on your heart and on your mind.
it's been on my heart and on my mind for a little bit. But now I've just bought a house, and so like now I have to like make sure that I'm affording those payments. And then the construction world is definitely a little bit nicer. But at the same time, I am starting a supplement company,
Cool.
and so I get my first set of samples this coming month. And I think that my thought was like, if I can I want it to be an educational platform as well, where
Yeah.
I have a book. I used to coach a kids camp. I want to be able to take that book and then be able to publish it and hopefully get into I feel like in undergrad there was not a lot of like very in-depth conversation of how to coach or what coaching was, and then how can you make it still very science-based and then keep people engaged. So then I created this booklet that I would use over my summer camps, and it was very interactive, keep the kids involved, and I want to continue to be in that space of educating kiddos and then educating the clients, and so it's like, well, would it be a beneficial thing to have the PhD? Very possibly. I think the guy who's in the fronts leading the charge, who is in this space of exercise physiology, who's promoting this healthy lifestyle, would probably be a good person to have the PhD in this space. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's definitely an opportunity. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where life goes.
I'm excited to see where it takes you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. When's the next time we're going to see you compete?
I was actually just talking to somebody about this. Probably, so since I have so much going on in the spring, I was thinking early summer or late spring, somewhere around then.
Early summer, late spring.
Yeah, because I just competed just a few weeks ago.
How'd it go?
It went great. I did really well. Hit a lot of the numbers that I really wanted to. Had a dang bit left in the tank for deadlifts, which kind of made me be like, dang, I need a fourth attempt, see what's actually in there. Um, but yeah, and then one best lifter of that meet, so that was super fun. But yeah, definitely a lot that I want to put on the platform in 2023. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
I like it. Well, I really appreciated your time and the conversation. Is there anything that you would like to plug before we sign off here?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, and it's just my name at Alyssa Parten. And then you can find us also at ladybeef.athletes on Instagram if you want to check out how our athletes are performing. We post little highlights of them there. And then you can find us on our website also at ladybeefinc.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.